Today I'm going to make Wolverine's bone claws from before he got the metal coating. For this build, I used EVA foam, cardboard, sharpening stone, cutting tools, sanding tools, safety gear, scissors, razor pens, and a box cutter. That's it. Not every build has to be break into an ancient tomb to steal the original Graflex flash handle. Sometimes you can get away with foam and cardboard. Wolverine's bone claws are a natural part of his mutation. Even without the metal, they're meant to fit between the bones of his hands and forearms. Oh, and before the copyright police come after me, that's not Hugh Jackman. That's an actual x-ray of my own hand. I'm fine, by the way. I'm just bad at fixing bicycles. Let's leave it at that. Okay, so I've already made metallic Wolverine claws using metal laminated cardboard. So I went back into my files, nailed it, and dug out the pattern from that build. I took that pattern and traced it onto another piece of cereal box cardboard in order to make a copy. The bone claws are slightly narrower than the metal ones, so I need to make a new pattern, but I don't want to cut up my original one. I'd like to do more Wolverine projects in the future, so I kind of want to hang on to the patterns. I cut that off of the larger cardboard piece with scissors, just so that it was easier to handle. Then I went back in with a marker and freehanded the narrower bone claw so that it would be within the confines of the metal ones. I used a different colored marker so that I could distinguish them. Then I cut it out with scissors. I did a test fitting before moving on. If I make any mistakes, it's better to find out now before I repeat them 6 times. Then I traced that again to make a copy for the detail layer. I drew 3 cross frames for reference. Then I cut out some parabolas in between those frames. See the difference? They're almost like joints. Next, I used the wider claw stencil to trace the claw shape onto a piece of white EVA foam. This was from a larger floor tile, which I used to make some Stormtrooper variant. I forget which one. In fact, I just finished a Tank Trooper, but I didn't actually do a build for that just because it's so similar to the Shore Trooper. I think it's just parts of the Shore Trooper and the Juggernaut driver mixed together. I'm getting off track here. Then I cut it out with a work knife. So I'm using foam for these purely for safety reasons. Initially, I wanted to sculpt one claw out of wood and then cast it in resin so that they'd all come out looking exactly the same, but would still kind of have that glossy tooth look. But while resin claws wouldn't technically be sharp, you could still take out somebody's eye with them. So it's a precautionary measure. I made some cardboard claws for a friend of mine in high school, and somehow she managed to cut one of her friends on them. Well, frenemies? I don't know. Maybe she did that on purpose. But still, it's cardboard. I sharpened the blade in order to get a clean cut. See, now I can cut that out a lot easier and avoid a great deal of sanding. I really have to consistently sharpen this with WD-40 and my sharpening block. That's important for this build in particular because these pieces, the blades, are so narrow that they tend to want to bend as I'm cutting them, and that'll really mess up your cut, so I had to stay on top of that. After it was cut out, I layered the segmented pattern on top of it, and I used a nearly spent marker to trace the curves. Foam absorbs ink, and I don't want it to show through, so I'm not using a fresh marker. In fact, you shouldn't really use a marker at all. You can get away with the pencil. It's just for the purposes of the video. Pencil is hard to see on camera. Then I repeated those steps 5 more times in order to get 6 claws total. Next, I used my work knife to cut out the curves. It doesn't like this angle. This was real difficult, really more trouble than it's worth. So I switched to scissors. Neither will result in a very smooth cut, but it doesn't matter so much here. I'm gonna sand away the imperfections once I'm done anyway. In fact, all I'm doing is trying to cut down on dust that will get kicked up when I do sand it. That's all. This may seem like adding an extra step, but my Roomba will only tolerate so much abuse before he declares a revolution. Oh no, he's collaborated with the 3D printer! See, look at all this garbage that I sliced off. So now I have 6 claws that look much more organic, but still need heavy refinement, especially to get rid of the foam floor mat texture on the other side. To be extra cautious against that showing, I made sure the texture side on the outer claws was facing inwards of the 3-claw assembly. Then I cleaned that up on the belt sander. You want to be really gentle with this step. I repeated that process for each claw. This is kind of a tedious process, so put on a podcast or something. Rounding them off on the belt sander sander completes the organic look. When they're all completed, they can be fitted into your palm. I chose not to connect these like I did with the metal claws because that will lock them into position. And Wolverine has shown that he doesn't need to have all three out simultaneously. So if they're all stuck together, then that limits your options. And there we go. And that's how to make Wolverine's bone claws. Hey, thanks for watching, everybody. I know this video was short, but I just built a suit of armor. All right, cut me some slack. In fact, I built a Hydra Stomper. Give me a breather before the next crazy huge thing. Anyway, still want to thank the patrons. Their contribution makes these builds possible. So if you enjoy these builds, want to see more of them, and want your build request to carry a bit more weight, then think about heading on over to the Patreon page, where you can enjoy ad-free early uploads. All right, don't forget to like and subscribe, hit the bell icon to be notified of the future uploads, and let me know what other props you'd like to see me make in comments down below. Thanks again, happy crafting, see you later.